Tianzifang, sitting in attendance on the Marquis Wen of Wei, often quoted with approbation the words of Chuang. The Marquis said, "Is Chuang your preceptor?" Zifang replied, "No, he only belongs to the same neighborhood. When he speaks about the Tao, his views are often correct. Therefore, I quote them as I do." The Marquis went on, "Then, have you no preceptor?" "I have. And who is he?" "He is Tong Kuo Shunzi." "And why, my master, have I never heard you quote his words?" Zifang replied, "He is a man who satisfies the true ideal of humanity, a man in appearance but having the mind of heaven. Void of any thought of himself, he accommodates himself to others and nourishes the true ideal that belongs to him. With all his purity, he is forbearing to others. Where they are without the Tao, he rectifies his demeanor so that they understand it. In consequence, their own ideas melt away and disappear. How should one like me be fit to quote his words?" When Zifang went out, the Marquis Wen continued in a state of dumb amazement all day. He then called Long Li Chen and said to him, "How far removed from us is the superior man of complete virtue? Formerly, I thought the words of the sages and wise men and the practice of benevolence and righteousness to be the utmost we could reach to. Since I have heard about the preceptor of Zifang, my body is all unstrung, and I do not wish to move. My mouth is closed up, and I do not wish to speak. What I have learned has been only a counterfeit of the truth. Yes, the possession of Wei has been an entanglement to me." Wenpo Shuizi, on his way to Chi, stayed some time in Lu, where some persons of the state begged to have an interview with him. He refused them, saying, "I have heard that the superior men of these states understand the subjects of ceremony and righteousness, but are deplorably ignorant of the minds of men. I do not wish to see them." He went on to Chi. On his way back to the south, he again stayed in Lu. The same persons begged, as before, for an interview. He then said, "Formerly they asked to see me, and now again they seek an interview. They will afford me some opportunity of bringing out my sentiments." He went out accordingly and saw the visitors, and came in again with a sigh. Next day, the same thing occurred. His servant said to him, "How is it that, whenever you see those visitors, you are sure to come in again, sighing?" "I told you before," was the reply, "that the people of these states understand the subjects of ceremony and righteousness, but are deplorably ignorant of the minds of men. Those men who have just seen me, as they came in and went out, would describe one a circle and another a square, and in their easy posture would be like one a dragon and another a tiger. They remonstrated with me as sons with their fathers, and laid down the way for me as fathers for their sons. It was this that made me sigh." Confucius saw the man, but did not speak a word to him. Zulu said, "You have wished, sir, to see this Wenpo Shuizi for a long time. What is the reason that when you have seen him, you have not spoken a word?" Confucius replied, "As soon as my eyes lighted upon that man, the Tao in him was apparent. The situation did not admit of a word being spoken." Yan Hui asked Confucius, saying, "Master, when you pace quietly along, I also pace along. When you go more quickly, I also do the same. When you gallop, I also gallop. But when you race along and spurn the dust, then I can only stand and look and keep behind you." The master said, "Wait, what do you mean?" The reply was, "In saying that, when you, master, pace quietly along, I also pace along. I mean that when you speak, I also speak. By saying, when you go more quickly, I do the same. I mean that when you reason, I also reason. By saying, when you gallop, I also gallop, I mean that when you speak of the way, I also speak of the way. But by saying, when you race along and spurn the dust, then I can only stare and keep behind you. I am thinking how, though you do not speak, yet all men believe you. Though you are no partisan, yet all parties approve your Catholicity. And though you sound no instrument, people all move on harmoniously before you. I do not know how all this comes about. This is all which my words are intended to express. Confucius said, but you must search the matter out. Of all causes for sorrow, there is none so great as the death of the mind. The death of man's body is only next to it. The sun comes forth in the east and sets in the extreme west. All things have their positions determined by these 2 points. All that have eyes and feet wait for the sun and then proceed to do what they have to do. When this comes forth, they appear in their places. When it sets, they disappear. It is so with all things. They have that for which they wait, and on its arrival, they die. They have that for which they wait, and then again, they live. When once I receive my frame thus completed, I remain unchanged, awaiting the consummation of my course. I move as acted on by things, day and night, without cessation, and I do not know when I will come to an end. Clearly, I am not here a completed frame. Even one who fancies that he knows what is appointed cannot determine it beforehand. I am in this way daily passing on, but all day long I am communicating my views to you, and now as we are shoulder to shoulder, you fail to understand me. Is it not matter for lamentation? You are able in a measure to set forth what I more clearly set forth, but that has passed away, and you look for it as if it were still existing, just as if you were looking for a horse in the now empty place where it was formerly exhibited for sale. You have very much forgotten my service to you, and I have very much forgotten wherein I serve you. But why should you count this such an evil? What you forget is my old self. That which cannot be forgotten remains with me. Confucius went to see Laozi, and arrived just as he had completed the bathing of his head, and was letting his disheveled hair get dry. There he was, motionless, and as if there were not another man in the world. Confucius waited quietly, and when in a little time he was introduced, he said, were my eyes dazed? Is it really you? Just now your body, sir, was like the stump of a rotten tree. You looked as if you had no thought of anything, as if you had left the society of men, and were standing in the solitude of yourself. Laozi replied, I was enjoying myself and thinking about the commencement of things. What do you mean? My mind is so cramped that I hardly know it. My tongue is so tied that I cannot tell it, but I will try to describe to you as nearly as I can. When the state of yin was perfect, all was cold and severe. When the state of yang was perfect, all was turbulent and agitated. The coldness and severity came forth from heaven, the turbulence and agitation issued from earth. The 2 states communicating together, a harmony ensued, and things were produced. Someone regulated and controlled this when no one has seen his form. Decay and growth, fullness and emptiness, darkness and light, the changes of the sun and the transformations of the moon. These are brought about from day to day, but no one sees the process of production. Life has its origin, from which it springs, and death has its place, from which it returns. Beginning and ending go on without any determinable commencement, and no one knows how either comes to an end. If we disallow all this, who originates and presides over all these phenomena? Confucius said, I beg to ask about your enjoyment in these thoughts. Lao Tzu replied, the comprehension of this is the most admirable and the most enjoyable of all acquisitions. The getting of the most admirable and the exercise of the thoughts in what is most enjoyable constitutes what we call the perfect man. Confucius said, I should like to hear the method of attaining to it. The reply was, grass-eating animals do not dislike to change their pastures. Creatures born in the water do not dislike to change their waters. They make a small change, but do not lose what is the great and regular requirement of their nature. Joy, anger, sadness, and delight do not enter into their breasts in connection with such events. The space under the sky is occupied by all things in their unity, and they possess that unity and equally share it. Then the 4 limbs and 100 members of their body are but so much dust and dirt, death and life. Their ending and beginning are but as the succession of day and night, which cannot disturb their enjoyment. How much less will they be troubled by gains and losses, by calamity and happiness? Those who renounce the paraphernalia of rank do it as if casting away so much mud. They know that they are themselves more honorable than those paraphernalia. The honor belonging to oneself is not lost by any change of condition. Moreover, a myriad transformations may take place before the end of them is reached. What is there in all this sufficient to trouble the mind? Those who have attained to the Tao understand the subject. Confucius said, O Master, your virtue is equal to that of heaven and earth. Still, I must borrow some of your perfect words to aid me in the cultivation of my mind. Who among the superior men of antiquity could give such expression to them? Lao Tzu replied, not so. Look at this spring, the water of which rises and overflows. It does nothing, but it naturally acts so. So with the perfect man and his virtue. He does not cultivate it, and nothing evades its influence. He is like heaven, which is high of itself, like earth, which is solid of itself, like the sun and moon, which shine of themselves. What need is there to cultivate it? Confucius went out and reported the conversation to Yan Hui, saying, in the knowledge of the Tao, am I any better than an immaculate in vinegar? But for the master's lifting the veil from me, I should not have known the grand perfection of heaven and earth. At an interview of Zhuang with Duke I of Lu, the Duke said, there are many of the learned class in Lu, but few of them can be compared with you, sir. Zhuang replied, there are few learned men in Lu. Everywhere in Lu, rejoined the Duke, you see men wearing the dress of the learned. How can you say there are few? I have heard, said Zhuang, that those of them who wear round caps know the times of heaven, that those who wear square shoes know the contour of the ground, and that those who saunter about with semicircular stones at their girdle pendants settle matters in dispute as they come before them. But superior men, possessed of such knowledge, will not be found wearing the dress. It does not follow that those who wear the dress possess the knowledge. If your grace thinks otherwise, why not issue a notification through the state that it shall be a capital offense to wear the dress without possessing the knowledge? On this, the Duke issued such a notification, and in 5 days, throughout all Lu, there was no one who dared to wear the dress of the learned. There was only one old man who came and stood in it at the Duke's gate. The Duke instantly called him in and questioned him about the affairs of the state. The old man talked about 1,000 points and 10,000 divergences from them. Zhuang said, "When the state of Lu can thus produce but one man of the learned class, can he be said to be many?" The ideas of the rank and emolument did not enter the mind of Po Li Shi, and so he became a cattle feeder. His cattle were in fine condition. This made Duke Mu of Qin forget the meanness of his position and put the government of his state into Po Li Shi's hands. Neither life nor death entered into the mind of Shun, the Lord of Yu, and therefore he was able to influence others. The ruler Yuan of Song, wishing to have a map drawn, the masters of the pencil all came to undertake the task. Having received his instructions and made their bows, they stood licking their pencils and preparing their ink. Half their number, however, remained outside. There was one who came late, with an air of indifference, and did not hurry forward. When he had received his instructions and made his bow, he did not keep standing, but proceeded to his shed. The Duke sent a man to see him, and there he was, with his upper garment off, sitting cross-legged and nearly naked. The ruler said, "He is the man. He is a true draftsman." King Wen was once looking about him at Chuang when he saw an old man fishing, but his fishing was no fishing. It was not the fishing of one whose business is fishing. He was always fishing, as if he had no object in the occupation. The king wished to raise the old man to office and put the government into his hands, but was afraid that such a step would give dissatisfaction to his great ministers, his uncles, and cousins. The king then wished to dismiss the man altogether from his mind, but he could not bear the thought that his people should be without such a heaven as their protector. Next morning he called together his great officers and said to them, "Last night I dreamed that I saw a good man with a dark complexion and a beard, riding on a piebald horse, one half of whose hooves were red. The man commanded me, saying, 'Lodge your government in the hands of the old man of Shang, and perhaps the evils of your people will be cured.' The great officers said eagerly, 'It was the king, your father.' King Wen said, 'Let us then submit the proposal to the tortoiseshell.' They replied, 'It is the order of your father. Let not your majesty think of any other. Why divine about it?' The king then met with the old man of Shang and committed the government to him. The statutes and laws were not changed by him. Not a one-sided order of his own was issued. But when the king made a survey of the kingdom, after 3 years, he found that the officers had destroyed the plantations which harbored banditti and dispersed their occupiers, that the superintendents of the official departments did not plume themselves on their successes, and that no unusual grain measures were allowed within the different states. When the officers had destroyed the dangerous plantations and dispensed their occupants, the highest value was set on the common interest. When the chiefs of the departments did not plume themselves on their successes, the highest value was set on the common business. When unusual grain measures did not enter the different states, the different princes had no jealousies. On this, King Wen made the old man his grand preceptor, and asked him, with his own face to the north, whether his government might be extended to all the kingdom. The old man looked perplexed and gave no reply. With an aimless look, he took his leave. In the morning, he had issued his orders, and at night he had gone his way, nor was he heard of again all his life. Yan Hui questioned Confucius, saying, "Was even King Wen, unequal to determine his course? What had he to do with resorting to a dream? Confucius replied, "Be silent, and do not say a word." King Wen was complete in everything. What have you to do with criticizing him? He only had recourse to the dream to meet a moment's difficulty. Thea Yuko was exhibiting his archery to Po Huan Wujian. Having drawn the bow to its full extent, with a cup of water placed on his elbow, he let fly. As the arrow was discharged, another was put in its place. As that was sent off, a third was ready on the string. All the while, he stood like a statue. Po Huan Wujian said, "That is the shooting of an archer, but not one who shoots without thinking about his shooting. Let me go up with you to the top of a high mountain, treading with you among the tottering rocks, till we arrive at the brink of a precipice 800 cubits deep, and I will then see if you can shoot." On this, they went up a high mountain, making their way among the tottering rocks, till they came to the brink of a precipice 800 cubits deep. Then Wujian turned round and walked backward till his feet were 2/3 of their length outside the edge, and beckoned Yuko to come forward. He, however, had fallen prostrate on the ground, with the sweat pouring down to his heels. Then Yuko said, "The perfect man looks up to the azure sky above, or dives down to the yellow springs beneath, or soars away to the 8 ends of the universe, without any change coming over his spirit or his breath. But now the trepidation of your mind appears in your dazed eyes. Your inward feeling of peril is extreme." Qian Wu asked Sun Shuao, saying, "You, sir, were thrice chief minister, and did not feel elated. You were thrice dismissed from that position, without manifesting any sorrow. At first, I was in doubt about you, but I am not now, since I see how regularly and quietly the breath comes from your nostrils. How is it that you exercise your mind?" Sun Shuao replied, "And what do I surpass other men? When the position came to me, I thought it should not be rejected. When it was taken away, I thought it could not be retained. I considered that the getting or losing it did not make me what I was, and was no occasion for any manifestation of sorrow. That was all. In what did I surpass other men? And moreover, I did not know whether the honor of it belonged to the dignity or to myself. If it belonged to the dignity, it was nothing to me. If it belonged to me, it had nothing to do with the dignity." While occupied with these uncertainties, and looking round in all directions, what leisure had I to take knowledge of whether men honored me or thought me mean? Confucius heard all this, and said, "The true men of old could not be fully described by the wisest, nor be led into excess by the most beautiful, nor be forced by the most violent robber. Neither Fu Shi nor Huang Di could compel them to be their friends. Death and life are indeed great considerations, but could make no change in their true self. How much less could rank and emolument do so? Being such, their spirits might pass over the Time Mountain, and find it no obstacle to them. They might enter the greatest gulfs, and not be wet by them. They might occupy the lowest and smallest positions, without being distressed by them. Theirs was the fullness of heaven and earth. The more that they gave to others, the more they had." The king of Chu and the ruler of Fan were sitting together. After a little while, the attendants of the king said, Fan has been destroyed 3 times. The ruler of Fan rejoined. The destruction of Fan has not been sufficient to destroy what we had that was most deserving to be preserved. If the destruction of Fan had not been sufficient to destroy what it had most deserving to be preserved, the preservation of Chu had not been sufficient to preserve that in it most deserving to be preserved. Looking at the matter from this point of view, Fan had not begun to be destroyed, and Chu had not begun to be preserved.